Greenleaf. Today's Sunday, March 22nd. I hope you all are safe and cozy at home. We are in unprecedented times. These are uncharted waters. So here we are doing Greenleaf Online. I've got a short video sermon for you guys today, but before I get into that, just a few quick announcements. The big question that we have been asking all throughout the beginning days of this pandemic is how can we best connect the people of our church to God and to each other and to those in need in their communities around them. And I want to tell you about 3 ways right now, especially that we're doing to connect you to God and to each other, and as other needs arise in our communities and we'll be able to meet them. The first is this. I want to invite all of you, if you've not already done so, to join us on Slack. If you're not familiar with Slack, it is okay. It is an app. It's an online service that we're using as like a communication hub for all of us in church. Since we are not able to rub shoulders with each other as much on Sundays and that sort of thing, this is a way to stay connected all throughout the week. All you have to do to get started is go to greenleafvineyard.com/Slack, enter your email address. You'll get a confirmation email right away. You're off to the races. If you need any help, let us know. We'll get you set up. Within Slack, there are various what you would call channels. These are sort of threads of different topics or themes that we'll be engaging in, one of which is called Daily Sparks. These are daily bite-sized meditations that are meant to connect you to God, which have follow-up questions so that you guys can connect with each other and hear what this sparks in each of you. There's also a prayer request channel, so you can share prayer requests of your own personal needs or in your family, in your community around you that we can pray for. You can also just check that out and pray for all the various needs that people are expressing. There's one for resources and more. There's other stuff that we're doing there. Encourage you to check that out and get connected with the rest of us. Also, strongly encourage you to join a circle. If you're already in a circle, stick in it. All of our circles have gone to online meetings. They will all be meeting via Zoom. Also, pay attention to your email and other sources because we are going to be extending and expanding circles. They were set within our trimester cycle to end in a couple of weeks. We are not doing that. We're looking at ways in which we can extend them and actually expand them out. So if you're not even currently in a circle, keep your eyes peeled. You're going to see more opportunities to join one soon. I would also invite you to join us on Sundays. We're going to be doing a couple different things. First, at 10 a.m. every Sunday, we invite you to join with us in Vineyard churches all around the United States and the UK for online streaming worship. All you got to do is go to facebook.com/vineyard worship to be led in some just intimate songs of worship to God by just some stellar world-class vineyard worship leaders, and folks from all over the globe are joining in. It's a great opportunity to do that. Also at 10 a.m. each Sunday is a video just like this one is going to drop on our YouTube channel. You just go to youtube.com/greenleafvc. We'll also share the link right away on Facebook and Twitter and other places like that so you can check it out. So what we're doing on Sundays is we're going to continue with the sermon series that we've started for Lent called Unbound, Live Freely and Lightly. And can I just say, it suddenly strikes me that we need to live free and lightly more now than we even realized that we all needed to a few weeks ago. And our kind of core text that we're basing this series off of is from Matthew 11, where Jesus says this. This is the Message version. He says, "Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." And today what we're talking about is a message called Unafraid, Freedom from Fear and Anxiety. Can I just make a confession right now? This open confession on the interwebs. I'm a little bit afraid. I've got some low-level anxiety that's been coursing through my veins over the last couple of weeks. The first time in the last couple of weeks that I really felt like a twinge of fear in me was when my mom was hospitalized. Something completely unrelated to coronavirus or anything, but suddenly here's my mom in a weakened physical state in a hospital in Atlanta. And I was feeling a little bit nervous about that. She's back home and she's better now, but I felt that extra twinge of fear that I maybe otherwise would have felt less. Another was when I realized that how this was going to affect our kind of side hustle as Airbnb hosts. It's going to impact us financially. Another that's been sticking with me the longest is how are we going to follow Jesus together as a church without the usual built-in FaceTime that we're used to each Sunday? Hence the question I referenced earlier of how can we connect our people to God, to each other, and to those in need around us. This has been really on my mind a whole lot in the last couple weeks, and it's got a little bit of anxiety attached with it. So if I'm honest, that's kind of what I've been feeling, and I think most of us probably do. And I think it's healthy just to confess that, just to get that out in the open, out in the air. Some of us, I think especially those in our church that I know are high risk, we're concerned for our own health. We know that we're extra compromised. Some of us have loved ones that we care for, that we live with, that are high risk. So we're a little bit fearful for them. Some of us are concerned about how this will impact us financially. Some of us are concerned about how this is going to impact our studies that we're doing and the programs that we're involved in, and graduation and papers we're writing and studies that we're doing in our labs and things like that. Some of us are concerned about those in our communities who we may not even know personally, but we know that there are so many in our community who are high risk physically. We know that there are those who are already food insecure, that this could really negatively impact. It could have really difficult ramifications on the poor, much more than for some of us that are maybe a little more well off. We're concerned for those who are marginalized, who just may not have access to good medical care. So whether it's for us, for our immediate family and friends, or for the extended community, a lot of us have a lot of just fear and anxiety, even at lower levels. And it's okay to just confess that and admit it. And what I want to pitch to you guys today is this bottom line, is that the opposite of fear isn't courage, it's love. The opposite of fear is not courage, it is love. Let me read this to you. This is 1 John chapter 4, verses 13 through 19. John writes this to the church. He says, "This is how we know that we live in him and he in us. He has given us of his Spirit. And we have seen and testified that the Father has sent his Son to be the Savior of the world. If anyone acknowledges that Jesus is the Son of God, God lives in them and they in God. And so we know and rely on the love that God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God and God in them. This is how love is made complete among us, so that we will have complete confidence in the day of judgment. In this world, we are like Jesus. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. Because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. We love because he first loved us." And I want to focus in today on this first half of verse 18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. And this is why it's important to name fear, because once fear is named, then it can be driven out. If we keep it bottled up, if we try to hide, if we try to pretend like everything's feeling okay on the inside when it isn't, it's harder for God's love to really drive it out. But we want to expose it, invite his love in, so that he can drive it out. And so I want to contrast a few things with you today. First is fear versus anxiety. These are very similar things. We experience them very similarly in our emotions and in our bodies, but I think it's helpful to understand a little bit behind this. Me, through counseling, I've learned this a lot to identify the difference in my own body with fear and anxiety. Fear, these are both very natural human emotions and things to feel, right? Fear is the emotional response to a real, immediate threat. Something that's right in front of you that is posing an immediate danger, like a bear. That's fear, right? If it's right in front of you out in the wild. Anxiety is the anticipation of a future threat. This is going camping and just having this anxiety and this fear inside of you that there might be a bear. You don't see one, you don't hear one, it's not chasing you down, it's not rummaging through your food, but you still feel that same thing. So fear is a very real immediate threat, and anxiety is a perceived threat. Now, of course, all around us, we're experiencing both of those. Some of us, it may very well be fear because we actually know someone, or we're living with someone who has the coronavirus. Or most of us at least feel this anxiety because it's this perceived threat that you can't see it, but you know it's in the air. You know it's around you, and perhaps you're touching something that has the virus and you could contract it. And it's important. I don't think it's really important that we necessarily divide those up well in our minds and our hearts, but just to acknowledge them as similarly related things. And the point is this, is that much the fear of, the function of fear and anxiety is just they're signals of danger. And it's important to us when we feel fearful or when we feel anxious that we acknowledge that it's our body telling us something. It's our body telling us something. It's saying, hey, pay attention. There's something in you that you ought to be attentive to. And of course, they're not just feelings, right? They're not just mental states, but they're actually accompanied by physiological changes in us that influence our behavioral changes as well. Again, as they enact this signal of danger, what happens is that fear and anxiety trigger the release of cortisol or adrenaline in our bodies so that we can kick into high gear, right? In order to avoid or deal with whatever that danger is. We become self-focused, we're on high alert. And it's the same with fear as it is with anxiety. So whether there's that real threat or it's just a perceived or imagined threat, this cortisol and adrenaline is coursing through our bodies to kick us into high gear. And there's two typical ways that people talk about what happens, and that is that you have flight or fight. You're either going to run away as fast as you can, or you're going to turn around, you're going to fight this thing. Some people also talk about a third option, which is freeze. Sometimes we get so freaked out by whatever is facing us that we clam up. We're kind of paralyzed, and we can't fight against it, and we can't run away from it either. And so it's important to understand these things, that fear and anxiety operate very much the same in our bodies. And this adrenaline and cortisol in our bodies actually has negative effects, which I'll talk more about in a moment. So that's the first things I want to contrast is fear and anxiety. The second is this, is the difference between feeling and being. I think this is important for us to grasp these days, the difference between feeling and being. Feeling afraid is different than being afraid. Does that make sense? Feeling anxious is different than being an anxious person. All of us feel fear at different times. But that doesn't mean that we have to be fearful people and be fearful all the time. All of us feel anxiety. It's not something that we control, and it's not bad. It's not an indication that you are a weaker person if you feel anxiety. But it's different to live life as an anxious person. Feeling fear is just a part of being a human being in this broken world. But living fearfully is not a part of being a citizen of God's good kingdom. So keep that in mind with yourself. It's okay to feel fear, but I think what the scriptures guide us away towards is just being people that are driven by fear and who are just overcome by anxiety. The third things I want to contrast is love and fear. And this is directly back to the verse that we were kind of centering on, right? That there is no love, there's no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. The opposite of fear, again, is not courage, but I think that the opposite of fear is love. Because again, fear, right, if we're thinking about our natural reactions to fear and anxiety, our fear causes us to fight, to flight, or to freeze. But love does none of those things. Love engages. Love embraces the one that is supposedly our enemy. Love runs into the fire, even at great personal risk, to rescue somebody who is in danger. Love engages with compassion and care and concern for someone else. And so we have a choice. We could be motivated by fear. We can swing aimlessly at something that's really difficult for us to fight. We can try to escape, right? We can go with the flight impulse and just hole ourselves up, wall ourselves off from everyone and everything, and disengage entirely. We can freeze, or we can be loving, compassionate people who treat ourselves lovingly, who treat our families with love, and who look for ways out in the broader community to meet needs with the great love of God. And the fourth thing I want to contrast and compare here is this idea of being a conductor versus a container. We heard some folks at a vineyard gathering recently explain this, and it kind of blew my mind. But fear and anxiety work like this. They're incredibly contagious within a system, right? And we all live within systems. So we have our family system, right? We can think about our church system. We can think about our whole community system or our whole entire sociological system that we live in. But within those contexts, fear itself acts like a virus. It replicates itself. And so each of us within our family system or in our societal system, we each play a part. We are not neutral parties. We are doing one of two things. Each of us is either a conductor, that is, we pass on that anxiety to another person and to another person. We allow that virus to replicate itself in other people's hearts and bodies as well. Or else we can choose to be a container, a person that stops the further transmission of anxiety. It doesn't mean that we hold it in and we just bottle it up to our own self-harm, but we deal with it well, we deal with it appropriately, we vocalize it to the Lord, we confess it to those that we need to, we do other positive things, and I've got some practical suggestions for you in just a minute of what you can do to deal with that fear and anxiety without passing it on to other people. So each of us has this choice. And in this day and age, I think it's especially important that we choose to be a container rather than a conductor. And being a container rather than conductor is actually a really practical way of acting lovingly to your neighbor. Because in terms of mental health, in terms of emotional health, for sure, we understand that we can kind of relieve the pressure of that on people. But this also is loving our neighbor in terms of physical health, because one of the negative long-term effects of anxiety in our bodies, with that release of cortisol or adrenaline in our bodies, is that it acts as an immunosuppressant. The adrenaline released over time weakens our immune systems, thus leaving us more vulnerable to illnesses and to things like the coronavirus and other viruses that would attack our bodies. And so choosing to be a container rather than a conductor isn't sticking your head in the sand and pretending like there's no problems. It's not just whistling in the dark and pretending like everything is okay. But it's speaking the truth in love and doing so in a way that contains the anxiety while we're responding in love to other people and caring for them. And so let me just suggest to you guys 3 practical ways to fast from fear and anxiety, right? In Lent, we're talking about fasting from food and other things. We can choose to actually fast from fear and anxiety as well, so that we can experience real freedom from them, so that we can live freely and lightly the way that Jesus is inviting us to. And the first is this. This is kind of more for your own self and your own heart, but I would encourage you to meditate on 1 John chapter 4. We only read a few short verses from it, right? But I would encourage you, this whole chapter is just, it's a way of just bathing yourself in God's love. So do this. Maybe just make this a pre-made decision that the next time you feel that twinge of fear or you're feeling that oppression of anxiety, next time you feel that, just open up your Bible, slowly read 1 John chapter 4. Read it out loud. Let yourself speak those words out loud, and you will hear them again into your ears. Read them slowly, digest them, let yourself marinate in them. If you get to a verse that just really hits you hard, stop there, pause there, pray about it, ask the Lord, say, Lord, what are you saying to me through these verses here? What are you trying to speak in the deep places of my spirit today? And I think as you marinate in God's love, right, again, perfect love drives out fear. So marinate in that. So first thing, meditate on 1 John chapter 4. The second thing is whenever you feel fear, anxiety, and again, that's normal, it is fine, there's nothing wrong with it, there's nothing sinful, it's something that we are all feeling and are going to feel again. Whenever you feel fear, whenever you feel anxiety, choose to do something loving. So you can feel one way, right? You feel fear, but again, the opposite of fear isn't courage, but it's love. So when you feel that fear or anxiety, do something loving for someone else. Get outside of yourself. I tend to be the kind of person that can get very much in my own head. I can get very wrapped up in my own emotions. And what I'm learning over time, slowly but surely, is that the fastest way to break that cycle in myself, that can really become a downward spiral, is to get outside of my own head, outside of my own self, and do something kind and caring for another person. And this could be as simple as praying, right? Again, back to Slack, you can go to those resources and say, oh, here's the prayer request page, and just say, oh, Jesus, pray for this person, meet their needs. Maybe there's a neighbor that you know of that has a real physical need. Go outside of yourself and do that. Maybe it's contributing to a local organization, whether donating food, whether donating other physical needs and supplies that are needed, that they're getting out to the community, whether it's donating financially to an organization like Convoy of Hope, for example, that we support. But just do something outside of yourself to lovingly bless someone else the next time you feel fear. And then third, actively choose to be a container rather than a conductor. And this is a little bit of a mindset thing, but maybe if you talk with those that you live with about this, you can help hold each other accountable. But choose this, and maybe choose one circle that's really important right now. So maybe it's just those that you're living at home with, right? Like right now, well, our kids are doing school at home. Angela and I are working from home. That is a great opportunity for us to choose to be containers of anxiety rather than conductors of anxiety. But think about your other circles of influence as well. Think about your circle that you meet with as a small group throughout the week. Think about those that you're working with. Even if you're working remotely, you're still interacting with people. Think about how it is that you engage with social media, right? Are you containing anxiety? Or are you being a conductor of anxiety? In Greenleaf, I have a lot of hope and expectation right now. I think that in times of crisis like this is when the church is able to shine the brightest. In times like this, when we cannot go to church, it's an opportunity for us to truly be the church for one another, for the world around us. And I think if we can choose to combat anxiety and fear with the powerful love of God, then our church, our families, our community, our state, our country, and the whole world could be all the better for it. So be blessed, be safe. See you next Sunday morning.